Okay, let's bring in the party strategist now. Susan Smith is a Liberal strategist, founder and principal at Blue Sky Strategy Group. Cole Hogan is a Conservative strategist, and George Sewell is principal at On Step Strategies, also a former NDP Director of Communications. Hello to the three of you.
Hello, Michael.
Okay, so the Prime Minister, as we begin here with Chris D'Entremont, the Prime Minister says he is still open to and willing to talk to anyone. Add into that anyone who's willing to cross the floor. Do you think that might still happen? Are there still MPs who might be willing, Susan?
I think there may still be MPs willing. I'm not sure if they will do it in time for the budget at this stage of the game. It was a big move for Chris D'Entremont to make that big step yesterday. I think that's something that he's been contemplating for a while. It was clear he couldn't put up with the toxicity of Mr. Poilievre. He put out a statement saying he wants to work with a leader who wants to build the country, not tear it down. And as the lone Conservative from Nova Scotia, I think he's more of a progressive Conservative and he's more comfortable in the direction that the Liberal Party's going. I think there are a few more Conservatives who have difficulty with Mr. Poilievre's style of leadership and perhaps some of the policies. They may be a bit gun-shy at the moment because some of Mr. D'Entremont's former colleagues absolutely eviscerated him publicly, and you can see why he would happily go.
Cole?
Yeah, I think that there's Liberal overtures to try to get more people to cross the floor, whether it's from the Conservative side or the New Democrats. But, the Liberals are 2 votes away from their majority, so I'm sure they're lobbying hard to have that parliamentary security they currently don't have. In terms of D'Entremont, I think a lot of people on the Conservative side view this, like caucus members, party members, a lot of younger Conservatives view this as a bit of a betrayal of all of those entities within the movement, because you said something quite different 6 months ago. So now, when he runs again in the next election, and I hope he runs again as a Liberal candidate, he's going to have to explain to the voters in his riding why he decided to cross the floor and why he didn't mean what he said he meant and why he didn't mean the criticisms he had for the Liberal Party and Mark Carney just 6 months ago.
Okay, I'm going to pick up on that point in a second. But, Cole mentioned the fact that it's not just Conservatives who the Liberals are probably reaching out to. They're also probably reaching out to New Democrats. Are there potential MPs who might cross?
Yeah, I don't see it at this point. I think there was a lot of talk right off the bat, right after the election, if that would happen. But I think as unique as this caucus might be among the New Democrats, and I'll admit that it's not the most the very diverse group of 7 people within that caucus. But I think all of them are pure New Democrats and true believers. I think also some of them come from seats that are pretty solidly New Democrats. So it's going to be hard to see any of those people move, especially since they haven't already. I think the Conservative side, the rumor mill in Ottawa is what it is, and so you can never know what to believe. But, I've heard upwards of 7 names from the Conservatives, and so a few of those have got to be real, probably. And I think it's true. They might be scared away. It's interesting to watch the Conservatives be like D'Entremont, lost them. I hardly knew him. This guy's been around for quite a while. He was the deputy speaker. He wanted to be deputy speaker again. He didn't get that. There's all kinds of things going on. And I think what we heard yesterday was that the Conservatives, rather than trying to show love to bring people back in, were cracking the whip. Yeah. And I think, frankly, for the progressive Conservative type folks, that was what was driving them away in the first place.
Okay, well, and that's the point I want to pick up on, though, because you mentioned D'Entremont being a red Tory, and he describes himself as such, a progressive Conservative, perhaps more than just a Poilievre Conservative. And he did throw that grenade as he walks out of the Conservative caucus room, saying there's no room for a Conservative like him, which I think potentially creates a problem for Pierre Poilievre, because you had Tim Houston unwilling to campaign for him, and that's the Conservative base in Atlantic Canada, more red Tory, more progressive Conservative than perhaps Reform Conservatives from the West.
It is in Atlantic Canada. I think I would argue it is in Quebec, and it is in Ontario as well. And we saw that in the last election. I know my email box was full of people, and you had lots of Canadians. That's how Mark Carney was elected. There were people who are progressive Conservatives in the country, and they are comfortable, and I think that's a good thing, with a reasonable, responsible, pragmatic plan that Mark Carney puts forward to them, and they trust his approach to running the country. And maybe it's not a permanent trust, but at the moment when the comparator is Pierre Poilievre, it makes it easy for progressive Conservatives to lend their vote to the Liberals at this critical time in Canadian history. And so I do expect there are others that are actively considering, but They're just probably weighing their timing.
Mm-hmm. You said you're anxious to see the next election and to see Mr. D'Entremont run as a Liberal, but isn't that a problem for the party if he runs as a blue Liberal and can attract the red Tory vote over to his side?
Yeah, so I saw D'Entremont's comments in terms of the red Tory stuff, and I think that's interesting for a few reasons, because the red Tory segment of the party is basically a Liberal vote anyway. And D'Entremont was a PC MLA from 2003 to 2019, and then until yesterday, he was a Conservative MP, so he was comfortable up until this point. What exactly happened? Like, I know he said he wasn't offered anything, there was no offer of a cabinet position or anything of the sort, but how come you didn't come to this conversation before the last election?
But the point he's making is there's no room for a Conservative like him in a Conservative party run by Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah, who criticizes the RCMP. I mean, Poilievre hasn't learned from the election. It's one thing, I think, to put your name on the ballot with the leader in the election, lose, get smacked, get handed your hat, and hope that there's change and lessons learned and change in approach. But, you know, Poilievre is like a leopard or a Dalmatian. Like, those spots are not going to change, and he's just doubling down on it. So it makes it more uncomfortable for someone like Chris D'Entremont, who only won by 1.1% of the vote. There are a lot of Liberals in that
Which
riding.
speaks to probably more of his self-interest than it does actual principle. Like, if red Tories actually existed and weren't just Liberals, Jean Charest would have won the last federal Conservative leadership race. The Conservative Party under Poilievre is something different, and it's not, you know, middling centrists trying to just be the Liberals. So if someone like D'Entremont wants to say that, oh, I wasn't comfortable any longer with this party, then that just sounds like, you know, a middling conservative who just, you know, at the drop of a hat, when it's more convenient, crosses the floor and becomes a Liberal.
I think there are a lot of Canadians who are comfortable in that center, and the Liberals would welcome them all into the party.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go to George. George, what do you think?
I'm happy to let them figure out who's more conservative than who. Like, that's a fight that I'm happy to let the Liberals have with the Conservatives right now. And I think that is what is happened. So two things, or both things can be true, right? I think that Pierre Poilievre has moved the Conservative Party, or at least his leadership has moved far to a place where a lot of Conservatives aren't comfortable. Just to the tone and the anger and those things, just even if you're fiscally conservative, you're not necessarily comfortable with that leader. And Mark Carney has brought the Liberal Party to a place where if you're a fiscal conservative, you can feel comfortable at home in the Liberals with seeing cuts and not expansions of programs and that kind of a talk. And so I think those two things have happened at the same time. So now you've got all these former red Tories who think I'm actually more. The kind of conservative that I believe in is more Mark Carney than it is Pierre Poilievre, and so that's whether it's an easy way to move.
How worried is the Conservative Party about losing red Tories who may be within their ranks right now and having them cross the floor?
I think with the influx of new caucus members that the Conservative Party has seen, these are Harper era and post-Harper era Conservatives for the most part. They're people that were elected under Stephen Harper or under Pierre Poilievre. So this is sort of, I would say, like, it isn't 2003. There's a much different version of the Conservative Party now than it was 20-some years ago. And I think most Conservatives are on board with the direction that Pierre Poilievre has taken the Conservative Party, not the middling centrism of whataboutism and maybe this, maybe that center sweet spot that doesn't really exist for Canadians.
Okay.
I think it does. Chris D'Entremont,
Quickly.
by the way, was elected in 2019. So that was after Stephen Harper.
Okay. Let me move forward here, because, you know, Chris D'Entremont, obviously that vote is needed by this government. It's a minority government. They need to get their budget passed. Chris D'Entremont gets them closer to the finish line, now shy of 2 votes. But does this point to a shortfall with this Prime Minister and this first budget? Because rather than doing a consultation that affects a budget that can create consensus in the House, he's looking for floor crossers in order to get this passed.
I don't think he's actually
I
looking
disagree
for.
with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Go ahead,
No.
George.
Well, I just don't think he's actually looking for floor clusters. I think he actually doesn't care that he doesn't have a majority, and he's acting like he does. And I think he actually is Prime Minister CEO and saying, look, here's the budget. I mean, if you look at it, there's not even colorful language in the budget to try to sell it. There's not stuff for every community. It's just straight up, here's what it is. If you don't like it, shove it, and let's go to an election.
I'm asking about. That's the short. Is
I think it is. He's not there to build.
He's
He's not there to build unity. He's just there to say, follow me or else. And his or else is let's go to an election. And I think it's almost interesting to see the floor crossers, because I think he's happy to earn or try to earn or lose the majority through another election.
Okay, Susan.
I don't think there's the or else arrogance that George is ascribing there. I think the Prime Minister has brought in the pragmatic budget that he signaled to Canadians that he would bring in, that he was signaled to Canadians he was going to do in the election and since. I think picking up members, if there are more floor crossers, I think any minority government is seeking to do something like that. But to suggest that the pinnacle of a budget in the House of Commons, or an achievable pinnacle of the budget of in the House of Commons, is consensus, I don't think is realistic. We can't get consensus around the dinner table. You're not going to consensus.
But building a budget that's passable within a minority house.
Well, he only needs 3 votes, and now he just needs 2.
Again, floor crosser. Cool.
Yeah,
Or
sure.
abstainer, or people who don't vote in line with their party.
All these things are possibilities here, but I think in terms of watching how the government is framing its budgets and its communications around it, when I watched the finance minister speak yesterday, he made 2 very interesting comparisons. One, he invoked former Liberal Prime Minister Jean Chrétien. He did that a few times, obviously trying to separate the Carney Liberals from the Trudeau Liberals and harken back to a time when the Liberals were more prudent fiscal managers. He also went a step further and invoked the spirit of C.D. Howe. So he was talking about C.D. Howe being the minister of everything from 1935 to 1957, who rebuilt the Canadian economy after World War II. And the finance minister said, this is the sort of thing we have to do. We have to think big like we did in the late 1940s to rebuild our economy. And comparing yourself to the government, comparing this Liberal government to the government of Mackenzie King and the post-World War II economy is, I think, a big stretch, but shows you the big swings that they're trying to take. And does that bring other parties on to vote for their budget? That remains to be seen.
Okay, remains to be seen. Very quickly, go around. Will this budget pass, Susan?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he's going to get there. I think just quickly on the earlier point, I don't think that the floor crossers are a threat to the Conservative Party. I do think it's a threat to Pierre Poilievre's leadership, though, and I think that's going to be a really big mark against them when the convention comes.
Okay, so a lot to be watching out for. The debate around the budget, whether or not it's passed, and to see if any other MPs join the Liberal fold. George, Susan, Cole, thank you for this.
Thanks.